I didn't want, at 18 years old, her to hit the door, so to speak, and never look back. What it meant, and this is a good one, meant I had to change. It didn't mean the structure of my home changed. Didn't mean that my morals or values or rules changed. It meant that my style of interacting with her had to be different.
Hello and welcome back to The Uncomfortable Truth. We have Blake Nelson. If you don't know who Blake is, go back and watch the last episode. We talk a lot about parenting. So as dads, we want to protect our family. When we see things that are getting out of control, when we see things that are going wrong, our job is to control it and fix the situation, right?
Dumbest thing I've ever heard. I think that's the tendency.
Okay.
Excuse me. That's what we as dads think our job is, and it's probably the worst thing we can do.
Yeah. Guilty.
Well,
I'm guilty.
I know why, but why?
Because, you really don't have control. That's the tendency. Like, I'll give you a story. My oldest daughter, love her to death. She and I are a lot alike, and so we get along really well.
I'm laughing. I'm laughing. Y'all haven't always got along really well, right?
No, we butted heads in high school.
Yeah.
For sure, because she's a lot like me. And
What do you mean by that, Blake?
Well, what we had was this fight for independence, which is very, very normal in a teenager, especially one at the time, and probably the time frame I'll give you is when she was 17, 18 years old. Well, it's very normal and natural to start wanting to flex your independence and freedom. And as a parent, we've got to do that. That's not our instinct. But in a year, when she turned 18,
Mm-hmm.
I was going to have zero control. Zero. And so the thought that really started changing me was, and this is probably when she was about 16 and a half. I have a year and a half with this child left in my home. How am I going to spend that? And what do I want to happen when she turns 18? What I wanted to happen was that when she turned 18, that we would still be able to have a good relationship, that I would still be able to have some influence in her life, and that she would want to call dad and ask for advice.
So when they're living with us, we have authority, right? They have to come home. We're like their coach. They have to come home, and there's authority because they're in our house. It's given, right? You can abuse it if you want to. You can do it right. But when they leave, the only authority that we get is what they give us.
Right. Of course, sure, you may pay for something in, college or car or whatnot.
Sure.
And sure, but that's going to be your only bargaining tool. So if you
Do
don't...
you want that to be your only bargaining tool?
What I'm saying is if
No.
you don't have that and you don't have a relationship and that bargaining tool gets thrown out the window, you have zero.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want, at 18 years old, her to hit the door, so to speak, and never look back. What it meant, and this is a good one, meant I had to change. It didn't mean the structure of my home changed. Didn't mean that my morals or values or rules changed. It meant that my style of interacting with her had to be different.
What did you modify? What did you see? How did you know what to modify?
Well, look at the hot spots. Whatever created tension in the home, I had to. Didn't mean that the rule changed. Let's pick an easy one. Let's pick curfew. Curfew didn't change, but 5 minutes late's not that big of a deal.
Okay.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, sometimes we lose our mind over 5 minutes. Let's pick another good one. Grades. We stopped caring about it.
Okay.
We set a bigger parameter, if you will. So every parent I've ever met, every parent that's walked through Heartlight's doors, which has been 3,000 kids or so, thinks that their kid's a straight A kid.
They think that that's their potential, or they think they should be if they're not.
I mean, you tell me.
All right, let me ask you this.
Do you think your kids should make straight A's?
No, I don't.
Well, you're on the abnormal.
Well,
I do.
Well, we've
And
been through.
here's the point I'm going to get to. My kid's smart. Both
Mm-hmm.
my kids are. And she could do it. It just wasn't top priority. So
Okay.
what in her life,
Yeah,
what we had to decide, we meaning my wife and I, is were we going to run a relationship over study habits? Were we going to create havoc in our house over study habits?
it seems really simple when you put it that way. Like, I want a relationship with my kid. The grades are not a big deal. I'm going to ask you from my personal perspective. So with our oldest daughter, we went through some great issues last year, where she was miserably failing things because she wasn't being responsible to take care of her stuff. We didn't necessarily look at what the grade was. We just know that her potential is much more than what she was making. I'm talking about like a bunch of assignments turned in a month late, 50s on stuff. Class was really hard. I understood that. And I looked at this stuff and I didn't even get it. And so
That didn't take much.
No, it did not. But our process through that was get your stuff done. We did ground her and take things away from her until she pulled those grades up. And those grades, at that point, it was like, just pass your classes. Would you, in that situation, just let the natural consequences play themselves out and
No.
not worry about it?
No, not totally. No,
Okay.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. There's still going to be structure. There still are some expectations, rules, but we don't have to be jerks in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And so if like, I mean, my tendency would be, let's say, that situation, well, then we know at night after dinner, well, she's got to sit down and study because we got to get this stuff caught up,
Right.
right? That's how we do it.
That's what you get to work. You work.
In the Nelson house, we're going to do it this way. Now, how I approach that, I can change. I can't control how she does it.
Right.
So that's where I'm talking about the difference is. I can go in there and act like, a sheriff and get my nightstick out and try to force this to happen. Guess what's going to happen? Probably not much.
And especially knowing your child, knowing that you and your oldest tended to butt heads. If
Yep.
you go in there with a sheriff's stick,
Yep.
she's going to pull her wand out too.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's going to win every time.
Mm-hmm.
Because what are you going to do? I mean,
You can't make them do it.
no, can't.
So
can't
was
force it.
there a point where you and your daughter had to have a candid conversation and you had to ask her questions about where you felt like you needed to change? How did those things come about?
I'm going to give you two stories that probably had the biggest impact, and you're going to laugh at one for sure, because I know that this probably hits home with a lot of people. My oldest came to me. She was 16 years old. It's Tuesday night during school. She comes to me and says, "Hey, can I spend the night at Susie's house?" What was my first response, guys?
No.
No.
No, why?
You know Susie?
It's school night.
Oh, okay. This is cool. Not okay.
Right?
Yeah.
She looked at me and said, "That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard."
That sounds like her.
And if I stayed, I'm so thankful that God is in control of me sometimes because, I'm just thankful. If I'd done it how I had normally wanted to do it, what would have my first response would have been, "You're not going to talk to me disrespectfully, right? We're going to go down that whole road of those things," because she was, right? She was
Right.
being disrespectful, blah, blah,
I'm
blah.
the man of the house.
For whatever reason that night, I kind of tilted my head like a puppy. I said, "I'm going to need a minute." And so I walked into our bedroom. My wife was back there. I said, "Hey, Aldous wants to go spend the night tonight." She's like, "No, it's school night." I said, "I know. That's what I just said." And I said, "But why? Why do we say that? Why is that our response? And she stopped. She goes, I don't know. That's what my parents said.
That's what my parents said too.
And I said, yeah, me too. But why? And she kind of looked at me. I said, look, okay. She gets herself up in the mornings. She's never been late to school. She gets herself up. Her grades are fine. You may not like them all, but they're fine. She's on the volleyball team. She practices. She comes in on time for the most part. Like,
Good kid.
Why wouldn't we let her go? And she kind of looked at me. She goes, I have no idea. I said, okay, I'm going to go tell her. So I walked back out and I said, hey, we'll see you tomorrow. And she goes, what? I said, you're right. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, too. Okay, here's my point. We
That's
have
good.
so many things that we've made decisions on because our parents did them that way. And we've never questioned why. And we've never taken our kid into consideration. We've just answered it. You know, the whole thing like, no, because I said so.
Mm-hmm.
When our kids really, when they're questioning it, they really may just be seeking information to understand. And had my kid not been wired like me, been disrespectful, rude, challenged it,
Questioning.
I would have never changed my perspective on something like that.
Man, that's so good. There's this story. Young mom and her 5 or 6 year old girl loves to stay in the kitchen with mom and help cook. And mom's cooking a roast, and she's got it putting it in a pot to put on the stove, or however you cook a roast, whatever. She cuts the ends off, and little Susie says, "Mom, why do you do that before you put the roast?" She said, "I don't know. My mom did it." She said, "Well, let's find out why." So they call her mom, which is the little Susie's grandma. Said, "Hey, Mom, little Susie wants to know why we cut the ends off of the roast before we put it in the pot." She said, "I don't know. That's what my mom did." Well, luckily, the mom, great-grandma's still alive. Well, I'm going to call her. "Hey, great-grammy, little Susie is interested in cooking, and she wonders why we cut the ends off the roast before we put it in the pot." She said, "Oh, baby, my pot wasn't big enough to hold the whole roast."
Oh, that's good. That's good.
So what was it? You had 2 stories.
Yeah, I do. I got another one, and it probably might hit people a little bit different too. We have to backtrack a couple of years. So it's still high school, still my oldest, and New Year's Eve's rolling around, right? Well, she gets invited to a party, and I just had one of those feelings like, something's off here.
Mm-hmm.
Something's not right. We'll make a long story very short, hopefully. That year, wound up drinking at the New Year's Eve party.
Your daughter did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Surprise, surprise. And there's probably really 2 stories in
Okay.
here. Sorry. We got time?
Keep going. We got
Okay.
time, brother.
All right. So we found out, of course, my kid is, she's not the brightest sometimes. So she told this, 20-year-old friend of ours. Well, of course the friend told us.
Yes.
So we already had the info, right? So now we get to choose how we're going to go about this. So we found out, we gathered around the counter in the kitchen, and I said, hey, we need to talk about this whole party thing. I said, you got anything you want to let us know?
When? How far after the party?
2 days.
2 days. You let it sit for 2 days?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Because the day after she felt terrible
Okay.
physically.
She couldn't have a conversation.
No.
It's like, this is not the time.
No. So knowing your kid, and I could see it on her face. You could just see the thoughts going through her head. And she started to speak. I said, no. Wait just a minute. Just wait. No, and I want you to think before you answer that question. And she said, okay, Dad, I drank at that party. I said, I know. And I totally expected my teenage kid at some point to try alcohol.
Sure.
Did I want her to? No. Did I expect her to? Yes. Now, my wife, a different story. But I expected this to come up, okay? And so it did. We had already laid out. She was driving. She had a driver's license. She didn't drive that night. Well, let's see how we say this. Thankfully, had some parents that took up all their keys and provided them to alcohol.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it, but yeah.
Hey, here's something I've learned as a dad. There's a lot of things that I do that I don't like that I do. Doesn't mean it's morally wrong. I'm not crossing any values, but I have made a lot of decisions I don't like.
Yeah.
Okay? This is going to be one of them.
Yeah.
And
being on the podcast?
Yeah. Yeah, this is something I really didn't want to do, but no, just kidding. So we're standing around the kitchen counter. She takes a breath, and she came out with the truth, which is really all I wanted, guys. Because if I don't have the truth, I can't move forward. If there's lies and deceit in a relationship, cannot move forward.
Yeah.
So the most important thing to me at that point was the truth. Because she was driving, had a car, we had already had kind of consequences lined out, rules lined out about what that would be if she was drinking or whatnot. And what we had pre-decided upon was she would lose 4 of her fingers and the car for like 2 weeks. Okay.
You can drive with a pointer and a pink and a thumb.
Yeah. I mean, just hold it like
Yeah,
this.
you're good.
But she would lose the car for 2 weeks.
Okay.
No questions asked. I mean, that's just kind of what we had decided upon. But when we got to this, because some of the things I had learned and just where we'd been, the truth was more important than that to me. And it was really hard for her to be honest in that situation. I don't think we realize how hard it is for our kids to tell us the truth. Because when they do and we jump on them, then we make them feel ashamed. And so what we teach our kids by how we respond sometimes is to lie to us.
A buddy of mine was on the show a couple weeks ago, and his advice is, it's like we're pre-programmed to overreact.
Yeah.
He said, your kid tells you something that is shocking, breathe and count to 10. That gives you a second to process how you're going to react to that situation, and you can never get that moment back, which might cause them to continue to be deceitful to you in the future if you overreact.
Yeah. I mean, you set them up. You set up a course and good. So, she told me that. I said, okay, thank you. Thank you for being honest with me. Her next question, of course, being a kid, what's going to happen?
What's my punishment?
Yeah, what's my punishment? And I sat there, and Melissa and I, my wife, we had already kind of talked about it. I said, well, look, the consequence was going to be dependent upon whether we got the truth or not. So here's what it's going to be. Since you were honest, and again, thank you. I really appreciate that. You're going to spend a weekend with us. This was on a Friday. She looked, she goes, huh? I said, yeah. She goes, so come Monday, will I be able to drive my car? I said, yeah, you will. I said, you're just going to hang out with us this weekend. I said, but it's not going to be the same next time.
Right.
She's like,
you don't get the latitude to make the same mistake again, but
all right. So
show you some grace.
The ending of this story, let's fast forward a year. Next year, following year, New Year's Eve party. She says, hey, Dad, I want to go to this New Year's Eve party. Same people, same friends. What do you think I was thinking?
Heck no.
Exactly.
No way. You kidding me?
Heck no. And that was my response
Okay.
to her. Okay. She gave me another gold nugget. She said, Dad. And I mean, it was a little heated. I mean, she's a little passionate
Sure.
like I am at times. But she said, Dad, how am I ever going to earn trust if you don't give me any? I mean, that's a shot to you know where.
Yes.
And so I'm gonna need a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
I walked outside. I took a few laps around the house. And in that moment, like, I think we all have these moments where we know, like, God just speaks to us. And this wasn't some, audible, big voice. It was just this thought inside. And it hit me. So I walked back in, and I said, okay, you're absolutely right. I said, but I just learned something about myself. And I said, I think it's very important for you to know this because it's going to explain why I'm such an idiot. Of course, she's fuming at this point. She's just mad.
Yeah.
I said, look, here's what I just realized. I like control, and I like to protect. And when you ask to be in situations that I can do neither one of those, I can't control the situation. I can't control your choices. I can't control the people around you, nor can I protect you. I get scared. And when I get scared, here's what I do. I clamp down. I get more aggressive. I get more assertive. I get louder, hoping that will control and turn the situation. I said, I just did all those things to you. I'm sorry. That's not your fault in any way. That's all me. That's all my junk. And I can't put that on you. I said, and you're absolutely right. If I never give you any trust, how are you going to earn trust? I said, so here's what we're going to do. You're going to go to that party. And you're going to prove me wrong. Because if you don't, I'm going to slash all 4 of your tires.
This is this is going to get rough.
But here's the deal. And thank God, this kid never made the same mistake twice. She made 1,000 of them, but she never did the same one twice. And she did. I mean,
She learned her.
as far as I know.
Right. But now she's on her own, and she's figuring this thing out, and she's having to take the guidance that you guys gave her growing up to form her own, the way she's going to live.
Yeah, I mean, and we've been able to talk about those things, since just high school days. And high school was rough for her.
How has the relationship shifted as she in your house to out of your house, being on her own, going to be married soon, like all those things? How has y'all's relationship changed?
Well, it started changing, like I said, when she was about 16. And when I started treating her more like an adult, not a little kid, it shifted in a good way. And I really have loved with both my kids, the older they got, the more real we could talk. Like now I can sit with her and talk like you and I are talking, like we're talking today. Doesn't matter if she doesn't take my advice.
Right.
Because she'll figure it out.
That's right.
I mean, we've had this just recently. I mean, she, get into a house and appliances go out, whatnot. Well, now I just get to sit and laugh because we've all been there.
Yes.
Right. I mean, we've all had to figure out how to make it work. And so, if she wants something, well, now she comes and asks, "Hey, what do you think I should do here?"
Like she really wants to know.
Yeah, man. So when you're sitting there telling those stories, I'm over here like about to start crying because I'm just like, wow, that so resonates with in my own life, and we're so unwilling as parents to admit that we might be the problem. That our control as a dad, we want to harbor our children and we want to control their every move, and we have to understand that God made them their own human being and their own self, and they have to make their own decisions, and then they have to know that there's consequences for those decisions. But our job as a parent is not to control their every action, and it's so hard to let go because you love your child so much. You want to put up these guardrails, and these guardrails, you're like, you don't want them to go outside of them ever. And you're like, man, I gotta protect my child's innocence. It's like you don't want to, and then you shame them when they make a mistake. And that's such a tragic, vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that it's such a vicious cycle until sometimes it takes somebody else pointing it out to you. Hey, look, you're doing you're shaming your child. You're doing this. You're yelling at them when they tell you the truth, and I can't, it just makes me so emotional because I can't tell you how many times in my own life I've done that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, man, and I think that dads, they want to have all the answers. They want to have, they don't want to let anybody down. They don't want to let anybody down in their life. They don't want to let their child down or their spouse, or they want the world to perceive them as a good dad, and so
and it took, I tell you what it took. It took a kid that in that moment most would deem disrespectful and rude.
yeah.
That's what it took for me to realize that. And so that shift came. Thank God had something to do in my life and said, hey, would you just shut up for a minute and listen?
Yeah, amen, man. Yeah.
But you talk about boundaries. We have a ton of horses at Heartlight. We probably have 25 horses. And when you start talking about building those fences, it's a great analogy, because I would tell you as parents, most of your fences that you have built are too tight. You're gonna have to increase the amount of room your horses have to run. But here's the thing about fences: we have 25 horses. If you've ever been driving down Highway 80 and going to Hallsville and you see horses out, those are ours, probably.
Or kids sometimes.
Yeah, or whatever. But here's the picture, the analogy. It's not the horse's job to make sure that the fences are up. It's my job as taking care of the property, and my job as a parent to make sure that the fences are good. The horses will get out of the fence if there's a weak spot.
Mm.
That's not their fault. That's just how they're wired.
It's their nature.
It's their nature. It's their kid's nature to get outside of the
Yeah.
boundaries. And it's our job to repair the fences to make sure that they're good. Now, there's lots of things here in East Texas that bring some troubles to these fences. We have all kinds of good thunderstorms and whatnot. Well, it's then I have to be aware enough to go, hey, we just had some stuff come through. We might need to check the fences, because if not, all 25 horses going to be out on Highway 80. But when I get out there, my job then is to get the horses back and out of danger, back into safety. It's not to tell them how dumb they are.
Mm-hmm.
You're an idiot horse.
Yeah.
We're gonna go back to that one. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
It's good stuff.
Man, I
Good
appreciate
stuff.
you being here today. That was awesome. Y'all go to parentingtodaysteens.org if you are struggling or you just want to do some preventative
Yes.
to learn how to parent your preteen into teenager years, and how to have and carry a relationship with them, and how to build that fence in the right spot that gives them enough room to run and to
Yeah.
grow and to make some mistakes and to learn from it.
There's some very good books to give you this type of mindset, philosophy, if you will. You need to start when your kids are like in 5th grade.
Okay. What are
Start earlier.
What about if your youngest is 15? Have we lost all hope?
No. There's time, but you're going to have to make a shift in how you do things. If you're on a track right now and butting heads with your kid constantly and nothing is happening, then my advice is look in the mirror and start making some changes. Because if you'll start moving towards your kid in a different way, chances are you're going to get a different response out of them.
That's good.
And a very practical thing, find something to do that your kids like, not you. Like, I love bow hunting and golfing. Neither one of my kids like to do either one of those things. Thankful for that. But what I had to do with 2 daughters, I watched some of the dumbest TV series I've ever watched in my life. Why? To have connection. I've had my fingernails painted, my toenails painted. I've played more volleyball in a yard than I ever cared to. And this is coming home after, fighting fires with troubled teens all day. What I want to do is sit on the couch and just rest for a second.
Yes.
And then a daughter comes in and goes, "Hey, will you bump volleyballs with me?" Yeah. Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to watch this Pretty Little Liars. I watched the whole season
Vampire
twice
Diaries.
because I had 2 daughters.
Oh, man.
But here's the deal. I did it so that we could have conversations. I did it so that I could pick things out of that, not pick it apart. It's terrible. And most Christian parents out there would never watch it because it's terrible, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back to, I've done a lot of things I didn't want to do or don't necessarily like doing, but I did it so I could have the right to be heard.
Gives an opportunity to have a
'cause
conversation.
I would take characters out of that show and be like, "Hey, your so-and-so friend kind of reminds me of this person. What do you think?" She'd be like, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah.
And so we would get to have other conversations. But you got to do things with your kids. If you're always correcting and you're always disciplined and you're never doing anything else, you're going to have a hard day.
That's good, man. Appreciate the advice.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you appreciate the advice as well. We appreciate you being here. Hit those buttons at the bottom if you got value out of this, and go kick the day in the face, and we'll catch you on the next one.